Refuse to pay $60 to fix my roof? Okay, I'll close your building site down and cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Posted by Hassad 802. Names, places, and timeframes have been changed per the rules. The characters in this story are my friend, who I'll call Brian, bullying demolition man we'll call Keith, greedy property developer we'll call Karen, and the insurance assessor. The tale of this nuclear revenge happened a while back and is a work in progress. It is too good not to tell, and I'll try to keep you updated down the track. Brian's neighbor is a typical greedy career landlord that left their rental house in disrepair. This poor tenant was living in the cold house, raw sewage leaking onto the lawn, and holes in the house that you could see light coming out of the house. After multiple requests from Brian, Karen refused to get any repairs done. When the state government introduced new laws about ensuring landlords are insulating their rental properties, instead of doing this to the house, Karen kicked their tenant out and left the house vacant for 5 years. 5 years. The old house deteriorated so much more during this time, with rats infesting the house and invading the other houses nearby. Brian and his wife, with their limited funds, were able to get sufficient lending from the bank and offered to buy the house and do it up themselves to improve the neighborhood or rent it out, as there is a massive shortage of rental properties in our local county. Greedy Karen did not want to sell, nor did she want to spend a cent on the house to remedy the rodent problem. She also didn't care about the effect that the house was having on the aesthetics of the street. It's important to know that Karen and her wealthy family have over 100 rental properties, and due to lax tax laws in this region, they do not pay a cent and can get tax write-offs when their properties deteriorate. Then they can claim this as a loss. Long story short, some of them appear to be leeches on our society and are one of the reasons property prices are so high and rent prices are skyrocketing in our area. Her husband is also the chairman of the state's Landlords Association, an association that he often fronts the media for, defending landlords and putting a good media spin on them when there's negative press. Fast forward 5 years, and Brian finds out his house is going to be demolished to make way for some new houses to go in on the small section. That's good news at least, though Brian and his wife were anxious about how smoothly the demolition would go due to the fact that the houses are quite close to each other. This is important for later. Prior to demolition, the company doing it had to get samples from all sides of the house to check for asbestos. Either Karen made it difficult for the company to get down the side bordering Brian's house, or they were simply too lazy, but only samples from 3 sides and not 4 were taken. Demolition day came around, and Brian was concerned that no safety barriers had been put up to protect his house from falling bricks of the chimney, nor was there anything from stopping dust and debris going all over his new deck and porch area. Later that day, Brian had the pleasure of meeting Keith. Keith is a demolition company manager that's well known around the district for only caring about money, and he's got little regard for people or property. Keith was doing the demolition himself today simply with a digger. Brian returned home during his break at work to check the progress of the demolition and found the demolition was already complete after only an hour or so. The demolished house was in a pile. He climbed up on his roof and, to his disbelief, found hundreds of bricks had fallen onto his roof, causing damage. Though he was lucky, none had fallen into the house. Brian phoned up the demolition man Keith to ask about what went wrong. Keith initially played down the damage, despite there being 200 bricks laying on Brian's roof. Even with the damage done, no apology, and the rude attitude of Keith, Brian kept his cool. Since I did a little bit of roofing when I was younger, I can fix up the roof if you just get me 4 new sheets of roofing iron and we'll call it even. Don't worry about paying for paint. I can sort that out when I paint the whole roof after the fall. Brian's roof was not in the best of shape, but it was in much worse shape after having bricks dumped on it, leaving massive dents and chipping the paint. This is the moment that a simple decision on Keith's part would screw him and the landlord big time. Not happening, pal. Your roof is effed anyway. I'll give you a sheet of second-hand roofing iron from my yard to repair the damage on the roof, and I can come and hose off the dust off your deck and your dog kennel. Cue the nuclear revenge. The revenge was not intentionally nuclear, but Brian had a dilemma that his roof was damaged and he needed it repaired. There was rain and snow forecast later in the week, and he shouldn't be out of pocket having to buy new materials to fix his own roof up to a good standard. Brian's normally calm and relaxed, and man, in this situation, the way he and the property were treated, it sparked an anger that I have never seen before. Brian got in contact with his insurance company, and due to the issue involving a roof, a building assessor arrived that day to assess the claim. The assessor would then be able to seek damages from the landlord or the demolition company if he found them to be at fault. Brian also reported the demolition company to the local health and safety authorities due to their lack of safety precautions used when doing the demolition. The assessor got on the roof with Brian and was mortified to hear how Keith had acted in such disregard with the damage done to the roof, and his lack of an apology for any wrongdoing. It got the assessor mad. He then looked more concerned and bent down and picked up some gray fibrous material. Luckily, thanks to the pandemic, we already have masks on Brian. This here looks like it's asbestos. I don't know how they got the sign off to get this house knocked down in this manner. You don't know at the time of being exposed to this stuff, but if you breathe in these fibers, it can cause serious diseases later on in life, including lung cancer. I'll get this sent off to the lab for testing, and we will be in touch. Fast forward another day, and Brian was contacted by his insurance company. It turns out the side of the house that wasn't tested was clad in asbestos. Not just any bad asbestos, the worst type that you can get. Insurance will be seeking damages to replace Brian's whole roof, not just the damaged part. The cost of replacement is likely to be around $20,000 USD. This is the cheap part. The demolition site has been shut down by local authorities, and there needs to be a massive decontamination of the area. This involves having to remove at least half a meter of topsoil on the surrounding properties, test the soil, and remove more if their asbestos is still found. Areas with decks need to have potentially these removed so that soil can be evacuated out underneath. The cost for this cleanup will likely be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But who will pay for this is unknown at this stage. Whether it's Keith or Karen's insurance or them personally, time will tell. In regards to Brian, his family, and his dog potentially being exposed to the asbestos, that's another battle for them to fight, and I'll keep you updated. Ooh, this is going to get spicy with these updates coming up. Hello, everybody. Let's dive into the updates. Let me know what you're thinking, and we'll be reading the chat along the way. Hello. Update 1. I have just been on the phone to Brian for half an hour. His workplace was very sympathetic, and they paid for him to have 2 days off trying to sort things out. This is in complete contrast to Karen and Keith, who are yet to apologize, and they've made life difficult for Brian and his family. Due to the neighboring property being closed off for entry due to the health and the safety investigation going on, it means Brian can't even get scaffolding on his roof yet to fix the roof. Brian's worried now that the landlord's going to try to make his life heck. She's also a lawyer, apparently. Karen was the person that offered the old roofing iron, apparently, and it's not Keith. She spoke to her husband, who said that because the bricks dented the roof, it means that it must have been rusty and old, so it doesn't need new iron put on. Keith did, however, go nuts at Brian for getting insurance involved, and also the Health and Safety Investigation Unit, who's currently doing the investigation. In regards to Brian and his family still living in the house, according to the investigator, the risk is negligible, and the problems will arise when the debris are removed from the section. This will require a large tent and so on. However, the wind has been strong the last few days, and I feel the risk is still high living next door to uncovered broken asbestos cladding that's not being kept damp. Brian asked the investigation office person by phone about what to do about his dog and if they needed like a vet checkup and so on. They were about a meter away from the fence, which is about a foot from the asbestos when it was broken up. They responded by saying, "Do you think your dog will live more than 20 years? If not, I probably wouldn't worry." Wow. Brian is also thinking that the landlord is probably scheming revenge of her own. Brian paid for a new fence himself a few years back to border Karen's rental, as when he moved in, the old fence was half falling down. She refused to pay half, despite this being law. He reckons because the fence is approximately 10 centimeters too high, she will ask him to cut the height down at his own cost, so it's in perfect position for her new houses that are to be built. Brian's plan is that he will pull the nice, expensive fence down entirely and put 600-meter high chicken wire mesh up, as this all is required by law, and there's nothing she can do about it legally, as he paid for and built the fence. I'll continue to keep you all updated. Also, as I know, the local newspaper editor I've offered to go with Brian to discuss the story with them once the investigation's completed, if Karen tries to make life difficult and also expose Keith for his dirty practices. Keith's company have just been awarded a multi-million-dollar contract for demolition of an old car factory, and this would raise some eyebrows. Update 2. A very small update, but not great news. I feel this story, as many have suggested, will not conclude in a warm and fuzzy feeling of ultimate revenge as things progress. Firstly, Brian informed me a fence has gone up around the exposed parts of the neighboring property. This is only to stop people from public going over to the debris pile and scavenging and so on, and then exposing themselves to the broken asbestos cladding. Brian also needed to take 2 full days off of work when this happened to try and sort out all the situation and reduce stress on his wife. talking with all the parties involved. So he was down 2 days' wages coming up to Christmas, but his kind boss has paid him special leave for taking them off. The insurance company, after further clarification, will be only paying out for 1/4 of the roof and the flashings. Brian will have to find funds to pay for the rest. This section of roof is, however, the most expensive, as it encompasses a large complex parapet gutter, roofing iron, and flashing. The cost? About $8,000 USD. I hope I can provide something more substantial in a later update when there's been more action. Update 3, January 9th, 2021. Wish this update was actually something to update you on, but alas, it's merely to say just due to the Christmas break, nothing's progressed. Brian cannot get his roof fixed until the area beside the house is decontaminated so the scaffolding then can go up. Update 4, March 20th, 2021. Another downer of an update. Brian's being paid $8,000 towards his roof. The landlord and contractor got away with not needing a huge area cleanup and convinced local authorities that the building site would be sufficient for decontamination, as the testers could not find samples over the fences of the surrounding houses. All the topsoil on the old section was removed and replaced. A new house has quickly been built by the landlord's builder. The house looks as cheap as they come. A kit set house and looks out of place. Sort of like a house you could load onto a truck and move if needed in the future. Brian still hasn't had his roof fixed yet, as he needs to save money to afford to pay for the whole roof. Update 5, April 13th, 2021. Wow. Brian tells me the demolition company are taking his insurance company to court on the amount they have to pay for the roof. Brian wins, there we go. So reflecting back on this story, man, it was looking grim. It was looking like it was gonna suck. But then at the very end, they hit you with a 180, and OP is like, hey, the insurance company called back. Brian is the victor. Keith and Karen suck. He is the winner. Boom. Good story. Good ProRevenge. Very satisfying ending when you think it's all going wrong. It's not. It's back. My first live read on the channel. You Were Just Cattle to Me, posted by Time's Ugly Stepchild. This story goes back pretty much 20 years now. To set the scene, I was working for a then cable TV company. The call center I was working at had been filled with guys poached from dial-up support companies countrywide to support this new super fast broadband that was being trialed in country for the first time. 500,000 connections. Woohoo! I say this because that meant our call center at the time was full of some of the best support engineers anywhere in the country. Some of the most intelligent people I have ever known. Anyway, about after a year there, 4 of us were asked to look into the complaint sent to the managing director, hereafter known as Big Boss, about the service. Mostly, these were the original brand Karens of the day, but occasionally the customer complaining was someone rather important and they needed the special touch, so to speak. Turns out, the 4 of us have quite different skills, but complemented each other perfectly, and before long, we were firm friends with the Big Boss's personal assistant at head office, and had very good reputations to boot after some devilishly difficult issues. Oh yeah, this is before Google, so being good meant you knew your crap, not just how to look it up. It was a great place to work. Turnover was practically zero. The fact that all of our staff were experienced before getting to us meant we knew what we were getting into. Then came the new director, hereafter referred to as A-Hole. A-Hole had come from another call center in the company, the customer services call center. He was also completely inept technically. Seriously, this guy once told me that directors don't use Excel and only Word, so I needed to copy all the spreadsheets into Word so he could modify the content and pass off his bullcrap figures showing all was well. He didn't understand how Excel worked, as it transpired. Anyway, all was not well. In the short time he'd been there, he had alienated most of the best staff. He tried to turn the staff into script monkeys as he wanted every case fixed in X minutes. We were rebuilding TCP IP stacks, hacking registries, heck, we even talked a few people through Win98 rebuilds. You ever tried talking your gran through changing a ringtone over the phone? Now try imagining getting Gran to rebuild Windows after Macacrap and Spyman Tech competed to see which could screw up her machine faster. Now, try doing it in 10 minutes or getting hauled into A-Hole's office to be screamed at for effing up his figures. Morale was utterly obliterated and we started losing good people. Head office knew something was wrong, so sent down the word through the line that the Big Boss was coming for a meet and greet. That line went through A-Hole, so of course on that day, some of the more vocal amongst us were wrote it off. Those selected to meet the big boss were, I think the nice word is sycophants, or people who were instructed what to say and followed out of fear. Upshot, Big Boss went away thinking all was well, and there must be some other reason for the issues on site. My break point came when my team was given an impossible task. By this point, I had already handed in my 30 days. I was about to become a dad, so I needed to get a proper career going. He wanted a flow diagram of every possible fault we were dealing with and its solution. And he wanted it all on a single piece of A3 paper. We objected. He demanded. We failed. We got reamed. Our manager got reamed, and let me tell you, she defended the heck out of us. We tried in vain to explain the nature of the calls, to explain that the reason we paid these very clever people to do this job was because they were essentially playing tech support to a nation of people who had turned a computer on for the first time ever today, did something they didn't know was stupid, and broke their machine. That means their internet didn't work, hence, our problem. His response, at a volume comparable with a tornado jet taking off at a full burner. I don't give an F. Let me get this through your stupid effing heads. You're nothing and I am a director, and when I tell you to do something, you do it or I will fire every single one of you. I can replace any of you anytime I want because you're nothing but cattle. Now get the F out of my office. I went home livid. My girlfriend at the time, pregnant with our first, worked in the same office, so while I was getting out, she would have had to continue to deal with a-hole. Knowing how he intended to treat my friends and family, I needed to do something. I didn't have a clue what I could do. Friday, I go into work, ostensibly to say my goodbyes and to do the exit interview, the paperwork, and such. One of those goodbyes was a phone call to Big Boss's PA. Me saying goodbye was a shock, because I'd been expressly forbidden to tell them over the previous month by, you guessed it, a-hole. She wanted to know why I was leaving. I told her. She asked me if I minded her telling Big Boss what I had said. I'll be honest, I didn't seriously believe anything would come of it, but what the heck, I thought. Sure, I'll get back to you soon. And she's gone. 20 minutes later, she calls me and says Big Boss wants to talk to me so he can have my personal mobile number. I give it, and sure enough, minutes later the big man himself calls. The next 30 minutes is spent detailing why I was leaving, why we had lost nearly 100 people already and had 18 resignations that week alone. Why didn't I hear about this when I was there the other week? So, I related the little personnel shuffle and the threats. This was my moment, and I tell you, I carped the heck out of that DM. I said, look, Big Boss, I get all you have is my word, and I could be just some disgruntled jerk, but my friends and family are going to have to work here after I've gone. And by family, I mean my pregnant girlfriend, so I have to do something. If you want to find out the truth, here is what you do. Number 1, turn up on site unannounced for a day. Number 2, send out your own email to the site as soon as you arrive, giving no time for a-hole and his cronies to get to anyone. Tell them to come to you if they have any concerns. Number 3, here is a list of people that should corroborate much of what I've said. The rest, it's up to them if they want to do something. Then decide if I'm a jerk. After a bit more chatting, the call ended and I went back to say goodbye to everyone. I told a few people, including my manager, what I'd done and told them if Big Boss did turn up, to get in there and tell him what's going on. Then I bid them all farewell, and I said I would see them all at the mass leaving due to them at the end of the month. I'm at my new job the Tuesday after, and I get a text from the girlfriend. Holy crap, Big Boss is here unannounced. More texts from other ex-colleagues saying pretty much the same thing. From what I gathered afterwards, Big Boss did exactly what I suggested, and it played out pretty much as I thought it might. There was a queue, a long one. That night, a-hole was summoned to Big Boss's impromptu office, and after that meeting, he went home. He was never seen again. I did get a call from Big Boss. He can't discuss details, but I'll be very pleased to know I'm not a jerk. Leaving was pretty cool too, I think. On entry, I was told I wouldn't be paying for a single drink that night. From there, my memory goes from fuzzy to total blank. The hangover the next 2 days was brutal, but totally worth it. Update: a few people have asked if we knew any more on a-hole after the fact, so I went looking. I went looking again on things like LinkedIn and such, and after a lot of looking, he had a fairly common name, I bashed in the right combo of name and company and found him. LinkedIn confirmed that he lost his job in 2001 when all this happened. He eventually found a new job in 2002, but it seems he bounced through a few companies with pretty big gaps in his work history. Currently, seeking new opportunities for the last 4 years. As I love to say, this type of pro-revenge, when you know you're right, you know you're absolutely right, and you just follow those books, stay above the table, and you deliver it, that other person digs their own grave and you come out the hero. Way to go, OP. Especially as a new dad-to-be, you did what you needed to do. Be sure to comment the secret phrase below, dummy director, and check out another video here. I'm Austin, see you there.